Happy Cinco de Mayo.
Cinco de Mayo, it is.
Here's no funny, interesting fact about Cinco de Mayo. It has nothing to do with Mexican independence. It's just an awesome opportunity to drink tequila, Dos Equis, Corona, lime, and just get like tacos. It's the only day during the year where you should celebrate a taco besides Tuesday, right? Because it's always Taco Tuesday. But on Cinco de Mayo, you can have as many tacos as you want.
Well, I just finished a lovely salad with lentils, and I have some Earl Grey tea. So I'm not following the program yet.
And you are not Hispanic. That is obvious.
I'm a sweet. I got my ancestry DNA, and I'm 50% Swedish, 50% Norwegian. I came up just like my parents told me I was.
Oh my God, really? Seriously?
Yeah.
That's a riot. That is just a riot. When I did
you ever do yours?
My DNA was nothing like I was told. Nothing. I was completely shocked. I'm 67% Middle Eastern and 16% North African. And then the rest is American Indian and Bastille. I don't even know what Bastille is. I have less than 1% Caucasian. But look at me. I look like a nice white girl. So that's a good lead in to what we're talking about, which is neurodiversity. You call it neuroimbalance. I like to call it neurodiversity because since there's more neurological pathways in our mind than there are stars in the heaven, some of us need to take different roads than others.
And you know what? We're not all the same, and nobody's expected to be the same or perfect. So, you know, when we talk about neurodiversity or imbalance or issues, we're just part of the same tapestry, and we all have different things and that, you know, is going on with us. So,
and that's great because now it's 2021 and we have an understanding that we're not all the same. But a lot of the people who are our age grew up with a lot of stigma around that. I'm supposed to be. I have not yet mastered the phone.
I just put mine in another room.
Well, it's an alarm to tell me to be here, so I'm on time. You know, a lot of stigma. So what we're basically talking about are the different levels on the spectrum of autism and epilepsy. Now, so many people who have grown up with epilepsy have been made to feel ashamed of that. You know, like there's something wrong with them. They were parented incorrectly. They were born wrong. You know, they can't drive. They can't do certain things. They can't be around lights. And, you know, it feels excluded.
Yeah.
Right. So since you're the clinician and I'm the alchemist, we're going to go at the brain. I wish I used to have a brain that you could take apart because the brain, you know, it has different hemispheres, right? And so different parts of our brain do different things, and people don't really understand how that gray jello matter really is. You know, all these neurons firing and all these different parts of your head. What does that mean, Elisabeth?
Well, you have different levels of function and different things happening in the brain. And so, like, if we just think about the front of the brain, your prefrontal cortex, that's where you're going to have your executive functioning and kind of like how you show up in the world and think about things. In the back of the brain, your cerebellum, that has to do with your motor functions and your movements and that sort of thing. The midbrain is your emotions and your memory and your hippocampus and your amygdala. And then how about the blood-brain barrier, right? That is like something encasing the brain and keeping it all safe. And then did you even know that it doesn't have any feeling? Like there's no nerve receptors for anything in the brain. So like when they do brain surgery, once they get in there, it doesn't hurt.
No, unless they nick a nerve. And then you might not really feel it until you wake up and can't lift the left side of your face. Yeah. So that's a really great thing, you know, and some, so people who were born, you know, with epilepsy, why does that happen? Can you tell us?
Well, it's, autism, epilepsy, any of these issues generally have something to do with the endocannabinoid system not working correctly. So when we think about nervous system communication, think about, normally transmission goes from A to B to C to D, and it's one way, but the endocannabinoid system gives us the messages going back and provides the feedback. And in some of these like just taking epilepsy, the wiring is not correct, and the endocannabinoid system is not catching things and balancing it out. And why is it not working? Probably because of genes. A lot of it is genetics or environmental toxins. When we think about, causes of epilepsy or autism, a lot of people worry about vaccinations. They worry about, lead and things that might be environmental. And then you just never know. I mean, a lot of these etiology unknown, and that's a fancy word for saying we don't know why it really happens. It just happens, and we have to manage it. Like all of the other things that we're talking about as we talk about managing health conditions, it's not whether or not something is good or bad, it's how do we manage it? How do we adjust and cope?
Well, so when you're talking about somebody that is created that way at birth, I don't know if a lot of people know, the first thing that we are created is a neural net. That's the first thing that happens, is the nervous system is created, the spinal cord is created, and then the brain is created, and then the body begins to form around that, and the human being begins to take shape. So these things are very, very subtle. And I just have to say this, because there's no science to back it up, and I am sure I am going to just get a whole bunch of inboxes. There is no proof that vaccines cause autism. Just isn't, not. So, now vaccines can do some other bad stuff, especially if they're a hot batch and you have allergies to things going on. But there is no science proving that if your kid got a measles shot, it's going to be having autism or epilepsy. Unless, of course, it already has a neurological firestorm inside of it brewing from the creation of its cells, then something that's a foreign matter like the chemicals in a vaccine, and or who knows what could trigger that response, and then we're off and running. Mm-hmm. Now, there's different kinds of epilepsy. There's the kind that is at birth. You have, like I have treated, unfortunately, many children that were born with epileptic issues. And then there's the kind that comes when you're older, just out of the blue for no reason. Now that feels to me like more of a neurological imbalance. Could that be why that happens? Like something happens, like an accident, injury, very stressful situation, causes brain chemistry to switch, and then boom.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and epilepsy can be something that is, something that is from birth. It can be something that develops suddenly. It can also be from a head injury. So a lot of people that have had a severe concussion or a head injury, they can end up with seizures. And sometimes the transitory doesn't last forever, and sometimes it'll endure. Think about people that had a bad car accident and the brain was just jiggled. They may or may not have autism or epilepsy, and it's, from damage, but, the brain recovers and it regenerates in many ways. We have neurogenesis and new brain cells going all the time. And then just compensatory mechanisms, because the brain will find new ways to circuit and manage and get those functions back as much as possible. And so, I don't believe anything is ever really permanent. As far as
how exactly then, my dear clinician friend, does CBD help mitigate things? And there's like a varying level of epileptics as well. I mean, like I've treated kids that are having 350 seizures an hour, and then there's the epileptic who's just having a seizure once every 6 to 9 months, or when they are in a weirdly lit room. So how do we treat that diversity even within that?
Mm-hmm. There's, all different kinds of different seizures and, what's happening in a seizure, but essentially it's electrical activity in the brain that short circuits. And, when we think about, what's going on, and again, going from A, B, C, D, it's supposed to be ordinary.
It's a complicated word. It has more than one vowel.
Orderly. So, and basically, somebody, think about like when you are just communicating, that the game telephone, where you give a message to the people, and by the time it gets to the 10th person, the message is very different. That's what's happening in a way with seizures, because it should be orderly, it should be bouncing around and everything's working well. But what happens in epilepsy is that the firings get scrambled and the messages get changed and the function changes. And so you get these hits and misses where things are like literally not lining up. And when you talk about CBD, how does it work when you put CBD in the mouth of a child having a seizure, and it just absorbs into the sublingual oral mucosa, and the seizures can stop? And why? Because when the endocannabinoids are working correctly, when we are at balance and our system is flush, we're correcting those imbalances, right? And when the child is not getting the endocannabinoids to work correctly, and you supplement with CBD, a phytocannabinoid, it's literally getting into the bloodstream, traveling to the brain, fixing the errors, and evening it back out. And that's why CBD can help.
Okay, and what about people who are having seizures and they're using drugs like phenobarbital or gabapentin, and all of those receptors are kind of getting blocked, and is the CBD still going to be effective when they're doing those kind of beta blockers?
Well, it's a little bit different. So when people are taking CBD, hold on a second, I'm looking for an article because I just found something earlier that I wanted to kind of bring up that was talking about epilepsy and sustained connections in the brain. And let me pull this up. Hold on a second. It was in can I share my screen, please?
Please share your screen, Elisabeth. We'd love to see what you'd like to show us. Mm-hmm. And then make sure to get the link dropped in the feed.
Yes, I will. So yes, it was a study that just came up in Normal. And let me put that in the chat. Here's the chat. Okay. So, and essentially, what they found is that, when we think about, the CBD evening things out, maybe it's fixing that hitch today. But what we're finding is these kids that are having the 300 seizures a week, as they are taking Epidiolex, and Epidiolex, by the way, is CBD. It's an isolated form of CBD. So it is made from whole plant oil, though. So it's not an isolate of CBD, but it is a whole plant CBD medicine that's about 99% CBD. And what they're finding,
just to drop in, that is what we make over here at Firebird. Mm-hmm. That is what our isolate is. Exactly what you said.
Yes. And what I love about this trial that shows is that it's not one and done. You can't fix something and have it just go away. You need to have continuous cumulative dosing of the CBD to really not just fix the errors today, but to help repair things down the road so that efficacy improves the longer you're on it. And this is a good guide for all things CBD. When I'm talking about my shoulder inflammation, which is how I got in here in the first place, taking that 1 or 2 doses was maybe helpful. But when I had my 100th dose, then I started to really notice how amazing this medicine is. And what they're showing here is that in a 2-year period, in this study, that the efficacy of the Epidiolex improved the longer the subjects took it. So 50% of the seizure reduction was achieved at 44% at month 1, 41% at a year, and 61% reduction at year 2. So as we're continuously dosing the CBD, it's
so let's wait. I want to tease this apart right here for a minute. Okay, so notice this is a conversation that I have with people all the time. I like to say that cannabis is the more you use it, the less you need it, and these numbers are kind of proving this right here. So as you see, the first month you have a 44% reduction in seizure activity. That doesn't sound like a lot, but it's astronomical if you're having multiple seizures a day. To reduce that by 44% is astronomical. And then notice it's only going up a tiny little bit in that first year, and then the second year, because it's really been able to feed into the receptors, it makes this huge jump to 61%. And then between 1 and 2 years, it's 71%. So it's almost a complete restoration of the nervous system over the course of less than 3 years. Now, opposed to doing something that's a beta blocker that they give people for, you know, epilepsy and things like this, which is, you know, actually destroying the body. It's not repairing it. It's doing things like, you know, harming the liver and the kidney function and the other systems of the body. It's also weakening the immune system and making the brain not as plastic, not as able to be neurodiverse, as we are saying. So please, people who are treating your children, especially if you think you can go to the store and buy a CBD gummy for your child that is, you know, experiencing seizures from epilepsy or other things, and you give them one gummy and you don't have this miraculous experience, please understand that this is a plant. It is homeopathy. You must get into your body, fill up your receptors, and then really begin to do magic.
Mm-hmm. And, you know, when we look at, you know, what people are normally doing with epilepsy, you know, what are they doing? They're, first of all, taking polypharmacy. This is, you know, what defined as, you know, multiple medications, generally 5 or more. A lot of these kids are on a lot of these different drugs, and they're anticonvulsants and they're sedatives and they're dulling the nervous system. They're not necessarily fixing the wiring like CBD can, because over time what CBD is doing is correcting the messages. Whereas the pharmaceuticals, they're just drugging them and trying to tap down that nervous system so that the electrical firing is not quite so misguided and so troublesome. But when you tap that down, it's sort of like when you're suppressing your emotions and you're trying to get rid of pain, well, you also get rid of joy, because, you know, that's what happens. And, you know, it's
you can't put a pressure cooker on anything and not expect it to blow. So what ultimately happens with these situations is that they can damper down those seizures in these kids for a bit of time, and then they spin back around with more velocity, more often, at a higher vibrational rate.
Yeah.
So you're not helping your child if you're just using pharmaceuticals. So,
and then,
you know,
how about diets? So keto and Atkins diets. So taking away carbs, taking away sugars are also a good way to try and regulate things, trying to get the body into ketosis.
Because your brain needs to eat fat.
It needs energy. It needs energy.
Yeah, it needs fat. Well, it needs fat. Your brain needs fat. Your brain is a glutton. What is it? It's like a gelatin. You know, it's a gluttonous blob.
Yeah, and so good healthy fats help, and so that's, you know, the idea behind the diets. But those diets are hard to maintain, right? Yeah, I mean, I don't know if you've ever tried to not eat any kind of carbs at all, even fruits. You know, it's hard. And then, you know, when you think about DBS, so deep brain stimulation, vagal nerve stimulation, some of these surgeries, literally like Frankenstein stuff, it is something that should be the last resort, but a lot of people are trying it because imagine having, you know, a couple hundred seizures a day or several hundred a week. But when we think about CBD, so Dustin Sulak and Bonnie Goldstein did a study a couple years ago, and they saw that whole plant formulations were really efficacious with these kids that were having all these studies. A lot of them, 670 kids were studied. They were on 5 to 10 pharmaceuticals, so a lot of drugs previously, and they saw a 50% reduction on the CBD, 70% reduction in 6 months, and 10% became seizure-free. So this speaks a lot. And then not only just thinking about the actual seizure, but think about all of the other ramifications of that seizure and the damage from having those repeated seizures that you're doing when, you know, a child or an adult is kind of thrashing around. It's doing a lot of damage. So CBD can help minimize the amount of seizures, the intensity of the seizures, the frequency of the seizures, and give people somewhat of a life back. Right?
It's science.
Yeah.
I love that. I love that it's science. Having treated, unfortunately, hundreds of children and adults with epilepsy, it is phenomenal. And I've seen the best with the whole plant, with the minimal amounts of THC and the high amounts of CBD. And, you know, it's just been some amazing stuff. So epilepsy is something that can just into your life and or you're born with it. But no matter what, CBD is always going to help restore the neuronet. Your like one of the things I really love about cannabidiol is that it literally, and it's the only thing on the planet that does this, and it's the constant amazing thing for me, is it literally regrows the myelin sheath of the nerve. And if you don't know, people, nerves are like like wires, and then they are encased in like a sheath, kind of like my stethoscope, right? So when the nerve is frayed, this part, the myelin sheath is what's frayed, and then the nerves are like just like tentacles, like out there in the world, like just flailing. And if you think about an electrical cord that was just flailing around your kitchen floor, you'd be freaking out that, oh no, I'm gonna like get like electrocuted or something. Well, that's what's happening inside of the brain when we're having seizures and things like that. So to be able to have a natural plant-based alternative that literally restores the myelin sheath is why this stuff works so well. Right, we just sold you. Did we sell you all on CBD for epilepsy? Because honestly, I cannot like preach this enough. How just the difference in people's lives it makes. Like immediately, their children are in a better place, and they're in a better place.
Well, and it's correcting the imbalance. And if we're to take this up a level back into the science, we have to talk about excitatory and inhibitory. So what's excitatory? That's glutamate. Glutamate wires you up. Glutamate is like energizing. It's like, whoo. It's like when you're firing on all cylinders, you might be running on a high glutamate level, right? And then GABA is the other thing. That's what calms you down. That's what is the inhibitory and makes you feel nice and relaxed and focused and just chill, right? And so GABA and glutamate, they're always battling. And what happens in the seizures is glutamate's winning. What happens when we try and put the drugs in, the GABA is winning. And so it's a constant push-pull. But what CBD does is it gets in there and it regulates the signaling in the first place, so you don't have this constant imbalance of excitatory.
It calms down the speedball of your brain, basically, because that's exactly what cocaine and heroin do as well. And they create this awful speed bump. I know that's really not a good analogy, but I am from the 80s. So every now and then it all just comes back down to drugs for me. Okay, just know that. Okay.
And I'm sure cocaine would actually really wire you up.
Yeah, well, actually it was very calming for me because of that GABA glutamate thing. Oftentimes the opposite thing is what will bring you down. So let's use that as a segue into my next favorite topic and my favorite population of people, those that we give that label autistic to. Now, I think that these are the smartest, most creative people on the planet. They're often misdiagnosed with ADHD and ADD. And, my dear friend here for sure is on some kind of spectrum, and so am I for sure. And what that means is that we are able to see the wholeness of the circle. All right, where a lot of people are really mono-minded. They have that executive function where they can, they see one pathway, they see how to do it, how to complete it. A lot of people who are on this spectrum that we use for brilliant people who we just don't understand, and then we label them, have the ability to see 360 degrees around the circle of their mind, come up with multiple reasons why something will or won't work. And that throws them into a quandary of, what do I do? There's 15 choices I can make that are all going to have outcomes that are serve me or not serve me. How that executive function is not so narrow-minded in autistic people on the spectrum. And the more on the spectrum you are, oftentimes the more smarter you are, because you're understanding life in a much different context than the average bear. So this is really uncomfortable when you're a child and you cannot fit in, belong, and conform into the confines of your school, your family, your friends, your church, whatever. And these parents often reach out to me, and what they want the most is to calm their child, to shut their kid up, to get their kid to sit down, be quiet, and just go with the flow. So how do we help? I always say it's not your child that needs the product, it's you. Because imagine how horrible it is for your child whose brain is moving at light speed to have to slow down so you can integrate the intelligence and natural beauty that just speaks forth from its mouth.
Well, and part of that, I mean, just think about the way we live in such a modern society. It's so fast paced, and we do need to all conform. We all need to get in line. We all need to behave. We all need to like not stand out in any way, shape, or form.
Well, I mean, maybe in your Chinese totalitarian environment, but over here in America, Elisabeth, I still think that individuality counts. You know, we all want to stand out. I don't want to see a homogenized society. Do you?
No.
Yes. Elisabeth's like, yes, I want everyone picking up their trash. I want everyone parking their cars correctly.
Right, like Singapore, you have to like get in line, and nobody can be divergent at all. But you know, when we talk about autism, we have to talk about the spectrum, because you know, you have people like me that I know are a little special that might be able to see that 360. But then you have people that are nonverbal. You have a lot of other issues that are going on in autism. And you know, if I just go back to here, you know, what is autism? I mean, I think it is pure and simple an endocannabinoid deficiency. And it has roots in genetic causes, but also creating these imbalances mainly in the gut, the brain, and the immune system. And so that's a perfect trifecta. When we think about the gut, that is our second brain. Some people even call it the first, but the neural networks and the enteric nervous system, and then the immune systems, which is constantly an inflammatory cycle, right? So neuroinflammation, gut inflammation, immune inflammation. These kids are suffering, and a lot of them aren't even able to communicate what's going on with them. I had a new consult yesterday with another boy who's nonverbal, 18 years old, very aggressive at this point, and you know, and they know when they don't do or do not have CBD, and trying different formulations. It's like, what is going to be, you know, the sweet spot to manage this body, mind, spirit, because it's all of them, right? And if the ECS is the motherboard between all of the interactions in our body of all of the different systems, and you know, our 11 other body systems, we have to get, you know, the immune, the neurological, and the digestive systems really lined up. And so, you know, what we're looking at with respect to autism is like, what can we use when? And I always tell parents they need a toolkit, because think about the different onset and duration of a tincture, right? And mainly I'm talking about tinctures, because that's how we, you know, can give these cannabis medicines to kids. But so you have tinctures that are going to help calm. You have tinctures that are going to lift, right? So calm down, lift up. Because moods are sometimes unbalanced and unstable. And depending on sort of where that kid is leaning, do we want to, you know, inspire them to get some energy, or do we want to calm them down? And some kids, you have to, you know, really go sort of hour by hour on this, although they do have, you know, ways that they normally are functioning. And so, you know, parents, again, they just need to figure out what the toolkit needs to be.
Yes, and I think it's really important that you brought up the gut health part. You know, a lot of time kids are complaining about, like, they're complaining, that's why they're acting out, that's why they're hostile, that's why they're hitting people, that's why they're hitting themselves. It's, they don't have the tools to say my stomach hurts, or, you know, or they can appear to be very picky eaters, and part of the reasons why such picky eaters is because they are very intuitive themselves, and they have an understanding will and will not function in their body. So I agree with you. I like to get my kids on the spectrum. I like their parents to take gum with them to up the ante if they're in a situation, and to also be mindful of where you're bringing your child. You know, if you know what the triggers are for your child, and you're going to put them in that environment, like if they don't like loud noises and lots of people, and then you guys are going to Disneyland, you know, help your child out before you get there, because there is a period of time where this stuff takes to break the blood-brain barrier. You have to use it more than once. If you have a kid, I was just reading this thing today about pandas. Are you familiar with pandas, Elisabeth?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know where you went. Where did you go? I lost you.
I'm here.
There you are. Okay, all right. All of a sudden you were like just nothing. And the article I was reading was talking about how it's a staph infection. You know, it's an infection in the brain, and then, you know, it's grow out of it. Well, you know, I've spoken to over 100 parents, and not one of them has ever made that mention to me. And I wonder how many of them are educated that way through their own physicians, you know?
Well, you know, I mean, a lot of medicine, if they can't fix it, they don't know how to talk about it, right? So
Correct.
it's like you can diagnose and you have labs and imaging, but a brain infection you can't necessarily see unless,
Right.
you know, it's, you know, something that's just rampant and it's, you know, really causing encephalitis and, you know, staph infection that you can, you know, really test for. But a lot of these kids, you know, it might have been something that was just under the radar and never really got truly picked up, but it's causing, you know, downstream issues that just don't go away. And then, you know, then they're like, and it's nuanced, right? So they're like telling the kid it's just all behavioral. And
Right.
maybe the
Right.
parents, there's something wrong with you too. Yeah.
Yes, the parents as well. You know, I really feel for my parents. So how do you, as a clinician, help parents who come in and, you know, have these issues where they've just, all they've is with allopathic medicine, they've never even switched over to a plant-based anything at all. And they've got, you know, 9-year-old on 12 different drugs. You know, how do you encourage them? How do you get them to work within all of that and maybe be able to integrate that?
Well, you know, I always like to start off saying that, you know, what we want to do is calm down inflammation. And like, if you could start there with cannabis, you could, you know, have a lot of conversations. The first thing we got to do is tone down inflammation in the whole body, in the gut, in the brain, in the immune system, especially with these kinds of conditions. And then you talk to them about this is something that is going to help over time. And we might be able to come down off of one of those 9 medicines over time and having adjustments on dosing. But let's start this at a very slow pace. So we just start with some CBD, some good whole plant CBD, and then just slowly ramp up on that and then see what kind of efficacy we have. And the other good thing about CBD that I can explain to parents is that it's not like a pharmaceutical just going into one receptor that's going to do a job. No, it's going to do that. As far as being anti-inflammatory and lessening some of the neuroinflammation, maybe balancing out that GABA glutamate difference, but then also helping the emotions, right? Helping to stimulate and activate dopamine, serotonin, norepinephrine, some of the other neurotransmitters we need to get going and to get balanced out to really help with mood, right? So we're helping the inflammation in the brain and the gut, and then helping the mood. And, you know, as we talked about before, CBD can activate serotonin. And so what's the benefit of that? That gives anti-anxiety effects, right? And a lot of these kids are very anxious. So if we can calm down the inflammation, we can calm down the anxiety, and then maybe some of that serotonin is going to also lift mood, give them a few more smiles, a little bit more energy.
Right.
Now you've got them a little bit more cooperative. And guess what? Everybody gets a better day.
Right. Yeah. I like to say that CBD provides space in the brain. That what it really does for for people who are on the spectrum is that it provides space in the brain. It's the easiest way for me to communicate what you just said with all of those fabulous science words, is that it just, by reducing the inflammation and helping that the gut have some more, you know, healthy productivity that way, and then create that serotonin response, you're just happier. And if you're happier, you don't necessarily want to hit your sister. And then the other thing about, you know, kids that are on the spectrum, there's some weird light that's coming through my face. The other thing about these kids is that, you know, they have their own language, and they have their own comfort tools. And in my experience of, you know, working with hundreds of kids on the spectrum, they all have a niche that they really go towards that helps them calm down and communicate with the outside world. And I've seen it a lot, you know, a lot more challenging for the parents to really be able to understand this niche. Like I had one client who her son was all about dinosaurs, and in their house they had something like 2,000 dinosaur figures. Can you imagine? She had just let him take over the whole 2,300 square foot house with little plastic dinosaurs. And not only getting him to use the CBD every single day, and then fire kitty at night for sleeping, but to work with him in a way that he could herd his dinosaurs into one particular room by giving him the lead and the understanding that, oh hey, the living room isn't safe for the dinosaurs anymore because the sunlight can hurt them, to engage him in story. And it took them about 3 months, but they managed to get all of those dinosaurs into the rec room, and now her house is plastic dinosaur free. And that sounds like it's not a big story. If you haven't lived with thousands of plastic dinosaurs, then you don't know the pain.
But you know what, else that's jumping into my mind is that, as we're calming the brain, calming the gut, improving the communication in the body, lifting mood, calming anxiety, that's also getting rid of some impulsivity and helping to allow for something different, for allowing that new thought that maybe they don't need to all be in one place.
Right,
and then
the space in the brain, Like now all of that is kind of calmed down. The dinosaurs, example, are just like the safety net for the child. So as that anxiety goes down and that space is created, then that person can begin to understand, well, I don't need 2,000 dinosaurs, I only need 200, or I only need 5, because I'm beginning to feel safe in my body. So, a shout out to all the parents of these children, because it is in no way I do not want to diminish what it's like to have a child that doesn't sleep for years. I have calls from parents, my child is 7, he hasn't slept for more than 2.5 hours since he's been born. I just want to put my head in this oven when they tell me that. I'm just like, are you kidding me? What do you do with that? So moms and dads, cannabidiol is going to work for you too. Like, get your whole family hepped up on some CBD. Everybody has not had enough sleep. Everyone is on edge. Everyone feels like they're not doing enough. Everybody feels like they did something wrong if they don't have a perfect child. And like Elisabeth said in the beginning of the conversation, there's no such thing. Perfection is imperfection. And it is the diversity of our nervous system that makes us individuals. And if that is allowed to be nurtured in our life, then we create autonomous individuals who are authentic in who they are, and no matter what spectrum they're on, no matter whether they need everything lined up in a row or they need it spread to all 4 corners of the room, there is an emotional plasticity that comes with it as well, where we're able to be accepting and giving of others. And I think it's really important that we just acknowledge that whether you're on the spectrum, you have autism, there's nothing wrong with you except for life is intense. I recently had an experience this week where I lost a family member to an inconceivable
reality.
And they had a brain aneurysm and they were brain dead immediately. And I was put in the position. This happened after our last show, actually last week, and I had to make the decision to unplug my sister, and you can just imagine how upsetting that was for anybody anywhere. And I was sitting in my office unable to get a hold of myself, knowing I had to drive 45 minutes to where she was at and then be able to communicate in a way that I could take care of her. If it was not for cannabidiol in that moment, I don't think I would have been able to do the other 3 steps, because my nervous system was absolutely just lit up. And there was no one with me, and there was no way for me to get myself back into myself and my grounding checked. And I was so grateful, and I really saw, because I've been with weed my whole life. I come from a cannabis family. I'm generations in this stuff, but this was the first time where I had a personal experience that was so far outside of myself that I didn't know how to bring myself back in. Like I couldn't tell myself to get my shit together to go do this, because there was just nothing happening. So I used some of the FECO, which is the fully extracted CBD concentrate. And, I used a has a tiny little bit of THC because I still had to drive. I still had to be functioning. I could not be checked out. And it calmed me down to where I was able to drive to the hospital, have those horrible conversations. That doesn't mean that I wasn't crying, that I wasn't a mess, but I was able to not get in a car accident, not, shake violently. And happened by taking the product immediately, like literally immediately, I was much better. And I was able to move through that terrible experience. So I'm sharing that because there are people who live at that level all the time, even though it's not because of a loved one dying. It's because they're just that much of a mess inside of their neurological system. They're that far out of balance because of what they experienced when they were growing up, because of accidents, because of just not having a deeper understanding or ever feeling like they were reflected in a loving way. And to see the power of this medicine immediately transform me in that situation, I'm like testament for life. So I'm really passionate about kids. Those who know me know I have a bunch of them. I've raised not only my own, but many others. We all deserve a fair shot, and we can't make parents responsible for anything. Once we grow up, we have to assume authority, responsibility for ourselves, become functioning human beings, no matter what hellhole you came out of, and cannabidiol, I think, is one of the ways to really lead that in the most beautiful way. Like to heal our brain, not only our brain, but our whole entire body, because it heals our nervous system. And in healing our nerve system, it heals everything else about us, because again, the first thing that we are is a neurological system.
Amen. Yeah, no, I mean, it's, thank you for telling your story and sharing and being open. It's, I'm sorry that happened. It's just unimaginable to lose your sister like that. It's just hard. But, that CBD, that cannabidiol, it is, a soothsayer in so many different ways. It mops up not only the body, gave you the neurological calming that you needed to be present and to be grounded and to function, but it also gave you that open space to say, okay, what do I need to take in? What do I need to do with this? How do I process it? And then, some of the studies when it comes to PTSD and living through trauma and living through stories where it is really hard to get the wherewithal of what you to even do next. CBD can help bring that back into balance so that you can have a better tomorrow. It's not like you don't remember what happened, but it doesn't have the same kind of negativity drawing on you going forward. It's going to be a loss for a while.
Right. Yeah. No, I'm not a week later, like, oh yeah, it's all good, man. I'm happening. And you also, my dear friend, have experienced a great tragedy that was unthinkable and couldn't happen. And you didn't have CBT at that time. So I know it took you a little longer. So if we could, we always say in these shows that my gal pal Mack and I are here to teach you guys how to be fishermen. We want to give you bait. We want to give you poles. We want you to get out there and find your truths. And the reason why we can do that, and the reason why we're so passionate about this, is because of our life experience. Hers in traditional medicine, and mine in homeopathy and non-allopathics, natural medicines. We have seen that there's a lot of misinformation. And a lot of you guys are just you're just misled. And, so, and you believe it if you see it on, don't believe anything we say. Please research what we say, find your own personal, but there's absolutely nothing wrong with you. You did nothing wrong as a parent. You did nothing wrong if you gave birth to a baby with neurological issues. These are just anomalies. Cells are just anomalies. There really is no, I have an uncle who used to say that life has no meaning except for that which we assign to it. And I truly believe that the more we assign joy, love, peace, the greater life we have. And it's so much easier for us because as human beings, as a science, we are designed to be unhappy. We are designed to look for the darkness. And it is our journey from our spirit to our soul as we grow up to find light, to learn about gratitude, to become grateful for all of our experiences, good, bad, ugly, beautiful. You know, even the guy that broke up with you, he's awesome because he gave you a gift. So there's nothing in your life that's happening that's not bringing you to the next highest place of yourself.
Well, that good point, and I love the idea of everything as a gift. So even if there's an issue with one system, you've got gifts in others. You've got different ways to prophecy and teach people, and to be a light, and to get help on one thing and to give help on another. So I was kind of joking that we all need to toe the line and be the same and conform, but we don't. When we look at the tapestry of human life, we have issues. It goes back to why do good things happen to why do bad things happen to good people?
Right.
Why is there ever an imbalance in anything? Why does somebody get something wrong at cancer at 5 years old? We have to live and love and support each other through these journeys, and it's through that give and take of understanding that we create resilience, right? And resilience is the name of the game. If we can get out of this life being resilient and having our body, mind, spirit be whole as much as possible, living up to our own integrity and authenticity, not the benchmarks other people are giving us, then we've done the right thing, regardless of how it looks.
Oh, and that's just it, be kind and gentle to people. So Mack and I are going to be, we did what do we do? 4 of these? Were there 4 or 5? How many do we do? I don't even know.
6.
6. Wow, thank you. Our girl behind the scenes, Haley, who you don't know, is keeping track of what we're up to. So thank you. We are going to, Mack has got some big major changes that she's going to have to really be neuro-flexible with. And, she's moving her location and her life. And obviously I have a lot on my plate. So we're going to rest this for a while. And we hope that the 6 episodes that we did for you, that y'all share them, that you listen to them again. There's a tremendous amount, deep dive into them. Make sure you reach out to Elisabeth at holisticcaring.com, that you check out her program. I have her book somewhere else. If you want to be a cannabis health coach and you start your own business, you're really passionate about this medicine, the program that she wrote, her mentorship, there's nothing else available but her. All the other ones are like, whatever, and we are here for you at Firebird Touch Therapy if we can help you in any way with any of these issues. I have 30 years, as a practitioner. So one thing that we don't have for you is pity. So it doesn't matter what you are going through. There is no reason for pity. It is just process. Do not feel bad or sorry for yourself. These are all gifts, awesome ways for you to learn, to stretch for your personal excellence. And, and be kind to each other. And if you have a kid that you can't stand because he's a handful, it's okay. It's all right to acknowledge that your child is too much for you to handle and you need a little help. And then in doing that, in the owning of that, there's some room for growth because you acknowledge that you need some help.
And ask for help. Always speak up and ask for what you need, because that is a part of your soul lesson as well. Right? We all think that, we have to have this image of perfection. We have to all be, just everything just right and buttoned up. That's not at all the truth. When you think about, the lessons that we learn in life, just think about the last year in COVID and all of the things that were taken from us. And now we're trying to get it back and find this sense of normalcy. But hopefully we regroup with an attitude of love and acceptance and peace and openness and understanding. I don't know politically there, we still have these different camps, but I do hope and pray for unity. And, if we can get cannabis and everything descheduled, CBD's all.
Oh my gosh, just think about it. The Senate and the House were like toking it up. We would have a much better country.
But even if everybody in the Senate and House used CBD, can you imagine just what that would do if they were all on your Buddha blend CBD? And everybody was balanced, and they're like, oh, I don't need to argue right now.
Right.
I feel pretty good.
Yeah, we're not going to get anywhere if we argue. You know, you're not. I promise you, you will get nowhere if you argue, but you will get all the way across the block and around the street if you can just open your ears and your heart and listen to the other person. You don't have to agree with them. You don't. But you have to make the space to hear what they have to say. And that is truly what has made America so great, you know, is the fact that we do have multiple, we do allow multiple things, you know, multiple viewing points, multiple radio stations. You ever been to the grocery store and tried to buy garbage cereal? There's like 700. Oh, also on that note, if you have a child that's on the spectrum and having issues, stay out of the center of the grocery store. Just don't buy anything in the center. Just stay on the sides where the meat and the vegetables are. Okay, stay out of the center, stay away from the snack food. If it's got a dye in it or something that you cannot say, do not give it to your child.
Just, yeah, processed foods. If we could eliminate processed foods, like what I just had for lunch, lettuce, spinach, red peppers, yellow peppers, green peppers, lentils, and a tomato. That's
yes, like, Elisabeth, that you're so healthy. You know, me, I had, well, I'm not going to tell you what I had because it was pretty vile and I don't want you eating it.
I want to feel good, and it's my responsibility to feel good. So
yeah, because this is the machine. You know, when you put garbage in, you can't put, if you put sugar in your gas tank of your car, you're going to destroy your engine, right? So why would you put sugar in the gas tank of your vehicle? Your body.
And I every night I do like my 2 glasses of red wine, so that is like my sugar. But the rest of the day I'm good.
All right. Well, it doesn't seem like any of you had any real questions. So we really appreciate you. Again, just share. Elisabeth Mack is found at holisticcaring.com. Lots of awesome programs, lots of help for you if you want to be a professional or you're just somebody who is suffering with some different I hate the word illness, you know.
Well, yeah, but all of these different conditions. And if you go to holisticcaring.com and you look at the patient programs and services, that's where you can find all of my other programs.
The imbalances. I love that you use the word imbalance because there's nothing wrong with you. You are not, ill means lacking light. So you are not lacking light as long as you are breathing air. You are filled with light, but you may be a little unbalanced. So let us help you bring it into balance.
And I am launching my autism and epilepsy program next week. So next week or the week after, that one will be launched. And so I have cancer, chronic pain, Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, MS, holistic wellness, mental health conditions like anxiety, depression, PTSD, psychosis, insomnia. And then autism will be launched in a week or so.
And such an awesome face, for sure. You have a very awesome face. I believe anything you tell me. Okay. All right, everyone. We appreciate you. Love you. Make sure to don't believe anything you're told. Question everything. And definitely do not get your information from Facebook.
Yay. Yeah. Right, thank you. God bless.